Welcome to Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius, your source for horror, sci-fi, suspense, and all things violent.
Hey, what's happening, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today on Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. Today we have episode 45. It's a week before Christmas. I don't know if I will put up another episode before next week. So today's short story is going to be coming from Twisted Reunion, and it will be Surviving the Holidays. That's one of my favorite stories. The holidays are usually not one of my favorite things, so that's why I wrote that story. So that will be at the very end. Also, I have a little bonus for you guys today. I'm going to read a story from, well, here's the brand new Try Not to Die at Grandma's House, new cover that my buddy Jeff Campbell did. He's the one who also did Ain't No Messiah. But at the back of this, we have the start of Try Not to Die in Brightside. So we have the very first chapter. I'm going to read that today. I'm going to pretend I'm a 16-year-old girl, and we'll see what my kind of impression is for that. But the focus today is going to be on Brightside. Very excited about the whole series. Yesterday we started a sale. It's only 99 cents today and tomorrow and yesterday. Did really well. We had a BookBub ad. I think right now it is sitting at number 3. Let me just look this up real quick. Yeah, it is currently number 3 on psychic suspense novels on Amazon. Number 12, American Contemporary Fiction, and number 6 on some other bullshit that I can't see right now, like metaphysical science fiction. But that's cool. Like, it's right up there with Stephen King novels, Dean Koontz, all my heroes. And so it'll be up there for hopefully this week. It'd be nice if it stayed there, but I need a lot more traction than this one little sale. But one thing I wanted to do was to thank some of my reviewers and to read some of the reviews. The good, the bad, the ugly, and there definitely is a little bit of both. Fortunately, most of them are good. I think we only have, it's 5% of the reviews are super negative, with a 1-star rating, but the majority of them are good. So there are some shitty ones, but I'll read those as well. I'm not going to read them all. But just to give you an idea, if you haven't read Brightside or heard it, which you can listen to for free, I believe it's all on SoundCloud, probably a couple other places. Also have it on sale right now at a couple audiobook places for only $2.99. You can check it out, see if it's something that you would be interested in. This was my first novel, and hopefully my writing has improved, but I still enjoy the book. Try Not to Die in Brightside is a nice continuation of it, and beyond Brightside, shit gets pretty dark and even more depressing than this first book. So that's a lot of fun for me to write. Already have that first draft done. Need to add to it, beef it up a little bit. But that should be done by the end of next year for sure. The goal is to release it by the end of 2020. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and get started. I actually need to respond. I just went through, I hired a marketing company. They were giving me all kinds of advice. One of the things that they advised me to do was to respond to reviews, especially positive ones. Negative ones, don't interact with them, because fuck them. Nah, I'm joking. It's fine if you don't like my stuff. But that was something I just never did. So after I get done with this, I will go ahead and write some comments on a couple of the reviews, because I really do appreciate anyone that takes the time to write a review. Not only to read my book, but then to write a review. It's something that I often think of doing for other people, and then I just never get around to it. So for everyone that has done that, whether I thank you on here or not, thank you. All right. Let's get started. All right, the first review on Brightside, I wasn't even going to read it because this is from my sister-in-law, so it probably shouldn't even be on here. She was the first one to review it, Erin, which was super cool of her. All right, so I'll go ahead and read it anyhow, but this one's a little bit biased because she knows I would hate her if she gave me a negative review. No, I wouldn't hate her. Erin's awesome. All right, here we go. I must say, this is not typically the category I choose to read. In fact, I never watch horror films and steer clear of anything that might give me nightmares. And for full disclosure purposes, the author happens to be my brother-in-law. I was, however, pleasantly surprised and devoured this book in only 2 days. The story was fast-paced and intriguing, and not violent just for violence sake, which I cannot stand. It's a great read for just about anyone, even those who can't turn out the lights after reading Stephen King. So thank you, Aaron, for doing that and starting the cascade of reviews. There's now 101 up there, which is really cool. The second one is awesome. It's from Jerry. Let's see. I met him at the LA Times Festival of Books. He's one of the first people to get a review copy of Brightside. Young man, very nice. So this is what he thought. His title says, "Boom, exploded my mind, 5 stars. Brightside is an amazing book. You have to get this book. It'd be a great sin if you didn't." Yes. This book is filled with twists and turns and horrible sadistic things. It'll make you want to close the book shut and sleep with your lights on. However, you wouldn't close the book because you will feel the chills running down your spine and you'll be wanting to know what's next. As for sleeping with the lights on, I recommend it. This is an amazing book, and I'm glad I was able to meet the author and get my book signed. People wonder, after great horror writers like Stephen King and R.L. Stine pass away, who will take their crown. Well, this is the author. Get the book. So that's super awesome. That definitely makes me feel good. It's nice to read that. Here's one. Again, this one's biased. It's from a friend, my friend Olivia. But she talked to me about this. She was one of the first readers. She really did like it. So I'm going to go ahead and believe this one. All right. Amazing book. I was hooked. Brightside is a captivating book right from the start. I downloaded chapter 1. I had to keep reading. I couldn't put the book down. I love when a book can take hold of me, and Brightside did. I wish there was a second book, which there will be. Can't wait to get to see future projects from Mark. Well written, great story. All right, let's go with another person I don't know. Dragons. Doesn't even have the person's real name. 5 stars, amazing. My faith has been restored. Great storytellers are still alive. I feel like I've stolen by paying only 99 cents for this book. It's well worth much, much more. Brightside grabbed me from the first page and kept me to the end. Characters were very well developed. I could not stop thinking about them after I finished the book. I have found myself thinking about thought thieves and hoping no one near me can hear my erratic thoughts. Looking forward to reading more of your stories. Stephen King now has a shelf made in my Kindle. Thank you, Mark Tullius, for the entertainment and the restoration of faith in writers. So that's really cool. I'm going to skip ahead to a negative one to keep this shit honest. I'm going to skip a couple. Here's a 3-star one. All the other ones were 5. Great idea, but I found it slow in places, which is legitimate. I love the overall idea of the book. The beginning got me hooked, but began to lose the draw after the first quarter of the book. I felt a lot of the book was just fluff to extend the length. The introduction of a new character in the last few pages of the book seemed unnecessary to me. I also found the ending predictable and a letdown. I did not enjoy many parts of the book, but found the pacing inconsistent. I did enjoy many parts of the book, but found the pacing inconsistent. So that was a 3-star. That's fine. All the others are 4 and 5. Let me go to the next page. Let me see if I could find a really negative one. Something's going to make me sad the rest of the day, but I'm doing it for you guys. Should feel good about that. Okay, here's a 2-star review. All right, by Anita Louderback. Didn't like it. Okay, I personally didn't like this book. It had an appealing plot, but the subject matter did not appeal to me. Okay, that's legitimate. I get it. All right, let me go to the next page and see if I could find a 1-star. I want to find a really negative, nasty one. Because if you are going to be a writer, you have to be prepared for this shit. At first it was tough, especially because reviews are important. You want your star rating to be up there. It's definitely something people look at. And so when you get a super negative review, it definitely hurts. But you just can't take this shit personally. All right, here we go. Self-obsessed drivel stopped me before I could get very far. Okay, so this is a 1-star. Like the title says, I I couldn't stand the main character's whining, self-obsessed drivel long enough to get more than a dozen or so pages into the story. Neat premise, but I will never know how it plays out. All right. Her loss, or his loss, or fucking is probably a good use of time, stopping something that you don't enjoy. And that's something I definitely encourage. It's something I had a hard time with before. I would always read books. I would keep going with them just because I wanted to finish them. I felt like if I started a book, I had to finish it. Now it's like, no, fuck that. If I don't enjoy something, just stop. So that person did not like Brightside. They stopped after 12 pages. All right, but we don't want to go out on that note. Let's go back. One final one. Because these were cool. These, this definitely helped a lot. Having this big, all the people review it, especially towards the start of the release when I was first calling myself an author, that was a really hard thing to do, and so it was nice to see people liked it. Okay, here's a person that I did not know, Elemental X. All right, tight. Last one I'm going to read. I don't want to bore you guys. Mark did an excellent job with his tightly woven tale. We've all read books in the that feature a mind reader in the storyline somewhere, but I've never read one where almost everyone can steal the thoughts from each other's head. Terror masked in the everyday. How can you tell who's the monster? Hard to find anything truly unique on a bookshelf anymore, electronic or otherwise, but you certainly have the real deal here. Kudos, Mark. From an active imagination and the ability to bring it to three-dimensional life. While the tale itself may seem fantastical, Brightside makes it utterly believable, to the point you're looking at the guy in line next to you and you're hoping he can't hear what's on your mind. I can think of little more terrifying than someone opening my mind and stealing my every thought, any given minute of the time, forever. I call this a tight book for several reasons. The characters and story are fully developed and there are no loose ends that need to be tied. Initially, I thought the dialogue was a bit terse. Don't be fooled as I was at the beginning. As the story unfolded, I realized why the internal dialogue was so stark. And here comes my other reason for this being a tight tale. Our hero, complete with clay feet, must hold every thought tight to himself in order to avoid life and mind-threatening consequences, and not only to himself. The tension builds with every risky encounter with another thought thief until you're frantically churning through pages to reach the ending, which comes not with a whimper, but a wailing scream. Looking forward to more. I do hope we'll get to see these characters again in the future. Thanks so much for offering the book for free, and to those who must purchase the print version, you'll get every penny's worth, and then some. All right, that was super cool. Let's go out on that one. So that was all about Brightside. So what we have coming up next is Try Not to Die in Brightside. You can find the excerpt at the back of Try Not to Die at Grandma's house. So Try Not to Die in Brightside is book 2 in the series. We're running a big contest. I believe the launch date is January 13th or 14th. Still figuring out all the prizes. But there should be a pretty large money prize and then a lot of cool jiu-jitsu prizes. I think we're going to focus on the jiu-jitsu community. My co-author is a brown belt. I'm a purple belt. Our character is a blue belt, a 16-year-old girl about to turn 17. Adding jiu-jitsu to her character definitely changed her a lot. From what I had originally written down, the main character, seeing this girl, he thought of her as a frail 16-year-old girl. That was just his first impression. So I wasn't sure exactly what we were going to do with her. There's not a lot written about her in Brightside. But working with Donna, giving this girl the jiu-jitsu background, it definitely changed the whole feel of the character and her decision-making ability and different things that she could possibly do. So let's just go ahead and jump into this. I'm not going to pretend to be a 16-year-old girl. I won't be reading the official version of this. That will be Donna Gonzalez, my co-author. She's also a talented voice actress, so she'll be doing the real version, but we probably won't have that until it drops on January 13th. And if you guys want, the pre-order for Try Not to Die on Brightside is out now. I think it's just the Kindle version. It's like $2.99. All right, here's a sneak peek. Try Not to Die on Brightside. Morning lights don't come on for another hour, but the sun's peeking over the mountaintop, teasing the tips of the massive pines surrounding the park. I haven't slept soundly in the 2 weeks I've been in Brightside, and last night was the worst. For sure the thunderstorm didn't help, but I would have been tossing and turning even if I used earplugs like Sharon suggested. I also don't need her to tell me that hearing neighbors dragged away in the night is another part of the equation. I've learned it's just another fact of life here. She doesn't know the real reason I was up all night, that I'm one of the outsiders who's not supposed to know a thing about the escape. It doesn't matter if I'm tired. Today's the most important day of my life. And I'm not simply saying that to motivate myself to get out of bed. Today might be it. The real thing. I like pretending this is the charming bed and breakfast we rented in Big Bear last summer. The floor is the same shade of oak, but there's no squeaks as I ease out of bed, careful not to wake Twister, the black and white bundle of fur curled up on the comforter. Wendell gave him to me on the first day here. He said this place could be just like home, only better. He said to focus on the positive. They stuck me on the second floor, overlooking the park, and I've got to admit, the view is breathtaking. But even better, the absolute best part about Brightside is my room. The decor is vintage thrift store, just my style, although the feng shui is all wrong with my bed pressed against a far wall. I love being able to crank the radiator full blast and keep it as warm as I want. If my room back home had ever been this warm, I would have been able to do my morning routine in just a sports bra. But there's no way that's happening here. The Boots say they turned off the cameras in our rooms, but most Brightsiders don't believe them. I slip on my baggy blue and gold sweatshirt, repping the high school I'll never return to, trying not to think about how my last 2 years there were snatched away with everything else. I step in front of the window, really soak the view in one more time, and then begin my sun's salutations. I inhale through my nose and raise my arms, take the slowest swan dive down to the floor and up to a flat back. I'm in charge of my body and mind. I control my actions. I control my thoughts. I breathe. Fold in and release. Let go of the tension holding me back. I acknowledge the understandable fear that's begging me not to do anything stupid. Mom, Dad, Wendell, and just about every one of my friends would take one look at this place and tell me how lucky I am, say I'm crazy to want to leave. They'd tell me not to look a gift horse in the mouth, that I'm living in the exact type of place I'd always dreamed of, something out of one of my books. It's not that simple, though, or maybe I'm not that simple. I float back up, bring my hands to prayer position, breathe. Brightside is beautiful. This scene outside my window is infinitely nicer than the brick wall I looked at back home. Blue skies, not gray. Sunshine breaking on Main Street and the square off to my left. The dog park and pond down below. All part of our cute little town. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, down. Inhale, flat. Exhale, fold. Rise and repeat. Return to prayer position. My uneven breath is a reminder that I'm still not acclimated to this altitude. My answer to Wendell, to all of them, is to look deeper. I step into crescent pose, spread my arms, and look farther up the mountain, my eyes stopping at the log cabin with a long bay window where the curtains are always pulled open. I can't make her out from here, but I'm guessing Nurse Jenny's working the front desk. She's pretty and blonde and always smiling. Every time she stops by the deli, she makes sure to be extra polite. But she's also never ashamed to think about how she wouldn't hesitate to whip out her Glock and blow any of us away in a heartbeat. Sometimes you can see the Boots inside the cabin, no less than 3 of them working at all times. But I won't stare too long because that's the kind of behavior that gets you thrown into there in the first place. That's where they would stick me for having these kinds of thoughts. It's where I would go for being a bad resident and not immediately reporting what I've learned. The cabin is something they want us to see, a silent threat that's always there, looming over us. I arch my back and lift my chest, spot the cemetery another 200 feet up. This is the place every Brightsider will be buried unless their families are willing to pay for secure transportation and suffer the embarrassment of caring for a thought thief. It's not something that I'd expected my parents, and I told them so. I also told them not to feel guilty for having those thoughts. I put my foot flat and flow into warrior, arms spread like I'm pulling back a bow, steadying the arrow. I am not a helpless princess waiting to be rescued. I drop deeper in the pose and search the forest for the roaming knights clad in black, sniper rifles their weapons of choice. Most mornings I'll find 2 or 3 of them. I spot one now, not far from the fence line. I flow through the salutation and find warrior on the left side. I reverse it and raise my elbow to the ceiling so I can see the welcome center way up high, nothing but trees and snow between it and the park. There's the second ranger walking a path north of the pond. A third is farther east, maybe 100 yards or so from Riley's, the last building in Brightside. There are cameras everywhere, and I'm sure I've only noticed the ones the boots want us to see. I don't see how anyone could plan an escape with so many eyes on us. I can't imagine how any attempt could succeed. I shake my head like it'll knock those negative thoughts right out. That kind of thinking won't help. They wouldn't implement a plan that couldn't work, right? I'm ready. My legs are on fire, and there's a tightness in my chest I hadn't noticed, like I've been holding my breath. I step in a mountain pose with my hands in prayer, my balance broken, and try to find my center. I'm so full of shit. Ready. I don't even know for what. All my life I've been so proud of my skill at picking off thoughts, and here I am with no clue how or when the escape's taking place. I don't know if there's a bomb, a helicopter, a tunnel, or a tank that rams through the front gates. I don't know if people are going to die, but it seems likely. All I do know is that it's taking place after lunch, and I'm going to be part of it. Somehow I'm getting out of this beautiful, quaint, awful prison. At least I figured out who some of the conspirators are. Sharon for sure is one, most likely a major player. Noah from work, but he's only a pawn. Wendell's boss, Carlos, another possibility. The one who scares me is Joe, their co-worker who almost fell 6 stories from their building yesterday. If Joe really is one of the key figures, what does that say about their chances? But even if the plan isn't ideal, even if it holds huge risks, does the potential reward outweigh the danger? Honestly, this place isn't all that bad for those of us who can follow the rules. But I miss my parents. I guess for me it comes down to control. I spent half my life learning not to be controlled. Why would I stop now? The pep talk isn't working. My breath is forced and the pressure on my chest feels like an opponent in jiu-jitsu dropping all her weight on me and holding me down in side control. I hope this anxiety will pass and not put me on my back like at work on Monday. It's getting worse, like a bear hug crushing me, causing my breath to become ragged. I crouch down to escape the dread creeping over me, and I crawl to the wall, put my butt against it and walk my feet halfway up into a restorative pose. My yoga teacher taught me this for anxiety, but the pressure is still pinning me down and actually getting worse. I hear a sharp sob through the wall. Sheila cries a lot, always thinking of home, her husband, and how he'd never forgive her. That's the reason I moved my bed to the other side of the room. Something about this sounds different, though. A thump shakes the wall, brings a wail of Sheila's thoughts with it. No, no. A voice, dark, heavy, and full of glee, thinks, oh yes. Sheila's grunts come through the wall along with her prayers for help, for air, to please put down the knife. The pressure gets worse, and I realize it's Sheila's panic, not mine, that I'm feeling. It's an intense, frantic agony of her struggle for breath. Please, anything you want. Sheila's thoughts keep screaming for air, for someone to help her. I put up my mental shield to block her panic, and the pressure is gone, but her thoughts still blast their way through. I turn to my side and get on my knees, wondering what I should do. A ripple of darkness rolls through me, making it so I can't move. It's the same voiceless violence I feel every time I pass the basement, and Wayne broadcasts his thoughts full blast. The psychopath thinks, unless you want to be filleted like this bitch here, you better climb your ass in bed and believe this is a nightmare. Oh God, he knows I'm listening. I freeze. Sheila's mind screams no, but my ears only pick up a muffle. I pretend they're training jiu-jitsu and Wayne's practicing his choke. Sheila tapping out is ineffable. Wayne shouldn't be able to hear my thoughts, but my mental force field is compromised by emotion. I close my eyes and double my concentration, then silently crawl back up to my bed. I tell myself I'm not a victim. I refuse to be a victim. Still loud and clear, Wayne thinks, "That's what this bitch thought." An explosion of sharp pain from Sheila is followed by a flash of her disbelief. "Oh God, he did it." Then nothing. I slump down in my bed, nearly squashing Twister. The phone's in the kitchen. My door is locked. I tell myself I'm safe. Bitch, no one is safe. But you lay your ass down and close your eyes and maybe you'll make it through the day. Everything that just happened seems so surreal. I almost believe it when I say, I'm dreaming. I must be sleepwalking. I'm going back to bed. That's a shame. We'd have fun seeing how many pieces we could cut Twister into while he's still alive. I curl up on the bed, hugging my legs to stop shaking. I'm a coward if I do what he says, and there's nothing stopping him from coming after me either way. I could call the boots or make a run for the sheriff's office. But what if this is a sick part of the secretive escape plan? Alright, so this is where you got to make a decision. A, block the door and call the boots. B, do as Wayne says and stay in bed. Or C, run for Sheriff Melvin, who's one of us. Alright, block the door and call the boots. Do as Wayne says and stay in bed. Or run for Sheriff Melvin, who is one of us. Alright, so that will be the first of many choices. It's going to be 22 days of death. I believe it's 21 days of actual choices. That will be choice one. We'll be having a giant contest where you have to see who could get the fewest number of deaths. I think everyone's going to die at least once. Maybe some will get through it all the way. But there will be a bunch of cool prizes, so stay tuned for that. I'll give more information as we get a little bit closer. Thank you guys again for listening. I got to wrap this up and go get my son right now. But I am going to leave you with Surviving the Holidays from Twisted Reunion. Definitely one of my favorites. Hope you guys enjoy it too as you prepare for Christmas or whatever you're going to celebrate. All right, guys, have an incredible week, and I will talk to you later. Peace.
Surviving the Holidays. At 12 years old, Paul began to suspect he was jaded. He wasn't entirely certain that he knew what it meant, but that's the word that popped into his head, and it felt right. What other explanation could there be for a kid hating Christmas? Paul just couldn't wait for this day to be over, the squeals of his brothers and sisters rummaging through presents, only making it worse. He didn't want to be this way. In fact, he envied his younger siblings. He wished he could feel their joy, but in the Harrison household, when you reached a certain age, Christmas lost its innocence. Presents no longer mattered. That time had come for Paul and his older brother Ron, who was slumped next to him on the couch. They had both seen too much and remembered too well. Jonathan and Francis, the blue-eyed twins, rattled boxes to their ears, trying to guess what was inside. Emily fluffed a bow that had gotten smashed in the stacking, and Tina, who just turned 5, was begging for help. Somehow she'd gotten herself tangled in a string of garland. Mother let out a little snort from the kitchen. "Ron, help your sister." Ron grabbed the end of the garland and twirled little Tina around until she was finally free. From the laughter and cheer, you'd never know the family had lost 5 children on this very day. There were reminders, though. Their stockings were hung above the chimney. Their homemade ornaments dangled on branches, the slips of paper with everyone's names, and Tommy's misshapen star on the top of the humongous fake pine. But these reminders were nothing compared to Emily's missing index finger or Jonathan's wheelchair. Ron wore a long-sleeve t-shirt to hide his scars, but Paul had seen them before. The 15-year-old looked like he'd run naked through a field of barbed wire. And finally, there was Tina, and the puckered pink skin around her little glass eye. She was the only one who didn't remember how she'd gotten hurt. Paul envied her the most. Only 5 minutes to midnight, and Christmas would officially begin. They'd vote and open presents. Paul wondered if other families had stupid rituals like theirs. Francis stood up. Paul had seen his mangled face 1,000 times, but it always looked worse at night in the shadows. Francis said, "I'm going to clean up this year. Who wants to bet?" Jonathan said, "It's a little hard to tell. Yours are pretty heavy, but I bet you anything Emily's are worth more," he said. "She asked for jewelry." Emily pushed Jonathan's wheelchair. "You can't tell people what I asked for. You know the rules." Jonathan stuck out his foot to keep from crashing into the wall. Francis dragged out a box from behind the tree. "Check this one out. It's the biggest one. It must weigh over 50 pounds. "No way." Jonathan spun back and said, "Maybe Mom got me the weights I wanted." Francis said, "It's Paul's." Paul ran over and read the tag. "It's a mistake," he said. "That's not mine." "It has your name on it," Emily said. "It's not mine. I only asked for clothes." Francis tried to shake the present, but it barely budged. "These are some heavy clothes." "Only clothes. That's all I asked for, I swear." Ron said, "Why wouldn't we believe you?" "'Cause I'm telling you, it's not mine." Jonathan did a quick count. "It's yours." He pointed at a pile of boxes by the ottoman. "And these are your others." Paul told himself weight didn't mean a thing. 2 years ago, the wrapping of one of Brian's gifts had been torn, revealing a new computer box. But inside were only rock-filled socks. Less than a minute to midnight, and Paul still hadn't made up his mind. Sometimes it was better not to, just go with instinct. But this year he felt he should give his decision a little more thought. Now that Tina was old enough, things could get interesting. A loud "ho, ho, ho" bellowed from the hallway, and out came Paul's mother and father, both dressed as Mr. and Mrs. Claus. His dad adjusted his fake beard and grabbed his gut. "Merry Christmas, children!" He slung a red velvet sack over his shoulder. It sounded like metal clanking inside. Mrs. Claus handed everyone a pencil and a piece of paper. The kids scattered and started scribbling. Paul looked over at Emily, who covered her slip. Tina asked, "Why do I have to vote? I don't want to." In a deep Santa voice, Dad asked, "Do you want your presents?" She shuffled her feet and nodded. Mom guided her to the table and helped her hold the pencil. "Do you want 2 extra presents?" Tina's eyes brightened. She nodded even faster. "Then vote for whose presents you want." She eagerly looked around the room. "Anyone's?" "That's the rule," Mom said. "But that's not fair," Jonathan whined. "She doesn't even know what her vote means." "I do too," Tina said. "She's 5 now. Those are the rules, and it's already after midnight," Mom said. Dad took off his Santa hat and bopped Tina's head with the fluffy white ball. "Hurry up," he said. Tina plopped to her knees and scribbled a name. The other kids dropped their slips into the hat. Emily dropped hers as if it were on fire. Ron tossed his in. Paul still hadn't decided. "Tick-tock, Paul," his mother said. Francis threw down his pencil. "You do this every fucking year. Just write down a name." Mom smacked the back of Francis' head. "Language." "Ow!" Paul felt everyone's eyes. Could they have actually picked him this time? He figured he'd had another year at least. He'd always sworn if his name was called, he wouldn't be like the others. He'd go out with a fight. But now his legs began to shake. Paul remembered he was the only one who cried because he'd only gotten 1 Christmas present. It's how this all started. Dad shoved the hat into Paul's chest. Paul finally dropped the name. It seemed to fall in slow motion. Mom took the hat and stepped into the middle of the room. "Okay, listen up. We're only counting this once unless there's a tie." She pulled out a handful of the slips and read the first. "We have one for Paul." She held it up for everyone to see. She turned the next paper over and sounded fairly surprised when she read Paul's name again. "That's 2? Paul's name was called a third time. He sunk back into the couch. One more vote, and that was it. But he still had the chance for a tie. His mom looked at the next slip and turned to Paul. "Oh, I'm sorry, honey," she said. "Can you read the rest?" Paul said. "It doesn't matter," Jonathan said. "I just want to know," Paul said. "He's stalling," Emily said. Mom looked at the last 2 slips. "Wow, 6 votes." "That's unanimous," Frances said. Dad grabbed Paul's arm. "You voted for yourself?" Paul stared at the slips covering the table. He always voted for himself because he didn't want to feel responsible. He just never thought it'd actually come back to hurt him. He'd assumed he was the likable one. Paul's mother picked up the red velvet sack and dropped it on the table. His father continued to berate him for not being man enough to write down someone else's name. Paul stood there watching his mother dump out the gleaming contents of the sack. "Okay," she said. "Who wants Paul's presents?" Tina and Emily dove for the table. Jonathan rolled over Frances's foot. Frances punched his brother's neck. "Are you stupid?" Paul leapt toward the table, knocking them both out of the way. He reached for the wooden handle of the jagged bread knife. "Hey, he's supposed to wait," Tina said. Paul's father grabbed his shoulder and dug his big, meaty fingers deep into Paul's clavicle. Instinctively, Paul spun, bringing the knife up and slicing through the Santa suit. The sound of the blade carving through his father's stomach was muffled under the padded costume, but he was no longer the invincible titan of Paul's childhood. His father took hold of the knife, tried to stop Paul from twisting it, but Paul dropped a little lower and drove the blade against the bottom rib bone. His father began to falter. Paul pulled the knife out, slicing through his father's palm. He went to stab his old man again, but a blinding white pain ripped through his lower back. Paul whipped around, his knife tearing through the air until it met Frances's cheek. Frances cried out and dropped his butcher knife. Paul turned back to his father, who was now on his knees. Another blade tore through Paul's arm, but he concentrated on his father. He stood over him, stabbing in and out of the soft, bulging skin at the back of his father's skull. The blood poured out and dripped through the fake beard. Paul's Achilles snapped and he fell. He saw the bubbled flesh of his forearm and raised the knife to all 5 of his brothers and sisters. He didn't want to hurt them. He knew they felt the same, or at least that's what they wanted to believe as Ron plunged the wooden skewer into Paul's chest. Frances drove his knife into Paul's arm. Emily stabbed his right. No longer able to keep his grip, Paul's knife clanged to the ground. Tina stepped forward and dragged her tiny steak knife across his throat. Paul smiled and took the weapon from her trembling hands. Gently, he made Tina turn and face his pile of presents.